Hey guys, my name is Edwin Giraldo. I'm a graphic designer from Chicago, and welcome to tutorial number 4. Today we are going to be creating this very basic structure that we see here, but we are going to add some really cool things to it. First, we are going to add a background to our website that is going to repeat over and over again, and it's going to be seamless. And the other thing that we're going to do is that we are going to set 100% wide header and 100% wide footer, and I'm going to show you guys how we do that. So our basic structure is going to look like this, what you're looking here on screen. So let's get started. So let's close Photoshop and let's start with Dreamweaver. So let's open up a new document in Dreamweaver. As always, I use Dreamweaver CC, but you can use any other text editor that you like. Okay, so we're gonna get started. HTML, HTML5, and let's create our page. As usual, first thing we do is that we are going to title our page, and we're gonna call it tutorial number 4. All right, now let's save it. And I already have a little folder set up for it. And let's just call it index.html. Okay, and we're just gonna replace the one that I had already done. Okay, great. All right, so now we are going to set up our styles as we always do. So style, type, text, CSS, and we close our styles. Okay, now let's make some space here. Okay, so now we are going to zero out our website as we always do. So we do that, typing in body, open and close brackets. We're going to give it a margin of 0 pixels, a padding of 0 pixels, and we are going to add that background image that I was talking to you guys about earlier. Okay, so in order to do that, we are going to do background image, and then we're going to browse to where that image is, and it thinks about it for a little bit. Okay, I called it bkg.jpg. In the description below, you're going to find a link to a place that you guys should know about. It's called Subtle Patterns, and it has a whole bunch of different patterns that you can download for your website, and it's really cool. So if you get a chance, check them out. All right, we're gonna put in that background there. Okay, close. And now in order for the background to repeat throughout our website, we want to give it a command that goes like this: background repeat, and we tell it to repeat. Okay, and what that's going to do is that it's going to duplicate that very small background over and over again in our page. And we'll see if we refresh here, you see this nice little pattern repeat itself over our entire website. Okay, all right, so that's how you do that. Now, okay, so let's get started. Try and visualize our PSD file here. All right, so we're going to have obviously our header. We're going to have some place for navigation, a banner, which usually is some type of image, our content, and our footer. Okay, now it's very important, and I've been kind of going back and forth with this. It's very important that you guys make sure that you plan for your website before you begin. So you want to, whether it be in Photoshop or some other image editor program, you want to design your website of where you want things to go. So I wanted my logo to be here, so I put logo. I want the header to be here, the navigation here, banner. And as you can see, I'm setting up where I want my website to go. I'm checking the pixels, what the width is supposed to be, what the height is supposed to be. So making websites, it's super important that you guys focus on where things are going to go and how you want things to set up before you even start coding. It's very important that you have that. That's going to save you a ton of time when you actually start coding the site. All right, so let's get started with the coding. First thing we're going to do is we are going to create a header. We're going to create that full-length header, right, that goes all across the page all the time. All right, so to do that, we're going to call it header background. Okay, so I usually use BK for background. Okay, so let's see what we're going to do here. The first thing is that we're going to give it a width. Now, because we want this to go all across the screen, we're going to give it 100%. Okay, for a height, we're going to give it 140 pixels for the height. Okay, we're going to give it that command that makes sure that it stretches all the way across, which is called clear both. Okay, and the last one, we're going to give it a background. So the background color, background color. The background color for it, we're just going to give it a black color. Okay, we hit save, F5, and nothing happens, right? Why? Because we haven't called it out inside our body. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go in here and we're going to go div ID, okay, header background. There it is. So we call that out. We save, F5 on the Mac, and there is our header. Now, like I was saying before, to use notes, so let's put a note here. It says end of header background. Okay. Now, what we need to do now is that this header is by itself. This is just a background, and this background is going to stretch all the way across. Okay. But on top of that, we want to create another box, and inside that box is where we actually going to put our two images that we have coming up here, which is our logo and our header. Okay, so we need to create another box where this is going to lie. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's open some space here in between. All right, let's go back to our styles and let's put together those headers. So the first one is going to be header wrapper, and I call that, that is the outside box of it. So we're going to call it the header wrapper. For short, I use WP. It's just easier for me to remember that way. Okay, so the width of that wrapper is going to be 960 pixels, which is the actual width of our entire website. So the width is 960. The height will be 140, the same as our header background. We want this to be centered on the stage, and to do that, we use our margin command, which is 0 auto. And then we're just going to give it a 0 padding. Okay. Now, throughout this entire video, you're going to see me type padding over and over again. We're not actually going to use that padding right now, but I think it's a good idea for you guys to get into the habit of always typing in padding inside your divs, because once you start moving along on your website, you're going to come to realize that you're going to need these things very often. So you might as well kind of get into the habit of typing it in. Okay, so now let's put this this wrapper inside our site. So let's call it in. So div ID, header WP, which is the wrapper. Close that div, and then let's do another little note here that says end of header wrapper. Okay. Now let's give it some space. Now inside this header wrapper is where we're actually going to put our little logo and our header. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go back up to our styles. And now let's do another div, another div called logo. Another ID, that's what I meant to say. Okay, so the logo. The width of the logo is going to be 350 pixels. It's going to have a height of 140 pixels. So it's the same height as the wrapper, and it's the same height as the background. That way it all looks seamless. Okay, so height is 1, and now here we're going to float it to the left, right? Because we don't want this to be in the middle. If we wanted it to be in the middle, we would use margin 0 auto, right? But we want it to go flush to the left, right? And then we're going to go padding 0 pixels. Okay, we hit save, refresh, and let's just go ahead and do the other one, which is called a header, and it's going to go, that one goes next to our logo. We're going to give it a width of 610 pixels, a height of 140, and just in case you're wondering why it's 610 pixels width for this header, plus 350 of the logo. If you add that up, that's going to give you 960. So we want, remember, always your math needs to add up. So here we're going to float it to the left again. I'm going to float it to the left. And again, let's just type in padding of 0 pixels. We save, refresh. Now let's put that into our HTML. So let's go here, go div ID, logo, okay, and we close that div. Now if you hit save and we refresh, we see that the div is right here, right? But there's nothing inside. Well, we need to put that image inside. In order for us to put an image in here, this is what you need to do. You step in between these two, right? Between this div ID logo and the div, and we're going to put in our image in there. To do that, we use this code. IMG for image, SRC for source. Then we browse to the image that we want to use. Okay? In this case, it's the blue one right here. That is called logo. So we click on that. Now, I spoke about this my last video. It's always a good idea for you to call out the width, which is 350, the height, which is 140, and then Alt. And here you put a very small description about what it is. In this case, it's our logo, so we're going to put logo. Okay. Now, this is used just in case your image is lost for some reason, or there's a broken link, and the image is not showing up in the browser. The user will at least get to read the word logo. Okay, the word logo. If the picture is not available, the word logo will come out here. So at least the user has an idea of what actually goes there. Okay, we save, refresh, and here's our logo. Great. Now we want to add the header, right? So the header goes on this side. So let's go ahead and add that. We go down one, let's call it in, div ID, it's called header, close that, close the div, save, refresh, and now you see that there's another div out here, right? But there's no image in there, so let's go ahead and put the image in. To do that, we do the same as we did before. MIG for image, SRC for source. We browse to the image that we want to use. We wait a couple hundred years because the computer's too slow. And there it is, header. Okay, plug that in there. Give it a width. Give it a height. And for the alt, let's just use header. Normally these are, short little descriptions of what your image is. I wouldn't go crazy, writing down a whole text of what you think should go there. Okay, so we save. All right, so now we have, let's go check it. Let's check it in Firefox, see what we have so far. There we go. Okay, so as you can see, we have our logo here, we have our logo image, we have our header image, and then we have our background that repeats over and over again. And we have our background header, which is black, that goes all the way across the website. And it follows along with the browser. Okay, great. All right, let's keep going. Okay. All right, so now here, this is the end of our header styles. Oops. Okay, so now we want to add a body down here, right? Now, because we don't want that one to stretch all the way over, we're going to create a wrapper for it, okay? An actual wrapper for the center. So here, we're just going to call it a wrapper for the middle section. Again, you guys can call it whatever you want, but just try and make sure it makes sense. Okay, so width 960, which is the size, is the width of our website. We're going to give it a height of 945 pixels. And we want it center in the middle, and to do that, we do margin 0 auto. Okay, we save, refresh, and now let's go back down here. Now here's something very important. From the header background, which is our black, really long div that goes all the way across. Okay, so because that goes all the way across, we want to make sure, okay, that this new div is outside all this header. Okay, so right here where it says end of header background, we're going to click after that right there. Let's just make a little note here that says end of header section, and let's continue underneath that. So it's easier to see. Here we go. Okay, so now we're gonna start with our wrapper. So let's call that into play. Div ID wrapper. Oops. Okay, let's do a little note. End of wrapper middle section. Okay, save, refresh, and boom, here's our wrapper right there. Okay, now we're going to put some things in here. Let's make some space right there and go back to our styles. Now for our styles, the first thing that we are going to put in it is our little navigation. Okay, so let's start with that. Let's call that navigation. Open and close brackets. Width. Width, again, 960 pixels. The height is going to be 45 pixels. We can float that left since it is inside the wrapper. Float left, and the padding 0 pixels. Okay, let's get that navigation in here. Let's call it in. Div ID, navigation, Okay, close that. We save. Hit F5, and again, you see, there's the div, but there's no image. So let's go ahead and put that image in there. Image source. Let's browse that. That's the third one. Of course, you can name your images however you like, or whatever it's easier for you to find. So you can name those whatever you want. Let's go height 45, alt, navigation. Okay, hit F5, and there's our navigation. Now we do the same thing. Oh. So let's do the same for our banner. So banner, open and close brackets. The width is 960 pixels. the height of the banner is 300 pixels. You're going to float it left. And we're going to give it a padding of 0 pixels. Save that. Let's put it in here in our wrapper. Div ID. Div ID banner. Okay, close that. Save. F5. There's our banner. Now let's insert the image. Image source. So again, as you guys can hear me, and this is when I'm coding and I'm not doing a tutorial, I still talk to myself the same way, and I repeat in my head what I'm actually typing. And as you can see, a lot of this it's repetitive. So you do the same way you put in the images, put in your height, and you do it over and over again, and that's how you actually learn. You repeat it, you type it in so many times, then it becomes easier for you guys to remember where things go and why they go where they go. Okay, so the last thing that we're gonna do here is our content. So let's call it in content, open and close brackets. Our content, the width, again, 960 pixels. The height is going to be 600 pixels. We're going to float that left as well. Okay. And just to keep it all the same, we're going to give it a padding of 0 pixels. Okay. Now, if you noticed up here, we called in our wrapper at 945. Okay. So if you add the navigation and you add the banner and you add the content, it's going to give you 945 pixels. So again, remember, your math always needs to add up. If one of your divs or one of your images is outside or something is not where it's supposed to be, you always need to make sure that your math is adding up, because most of the time it's human error. So the computers rarely make the mistake. So we're going to call it content. We're going to call that in here. And now we're just going to go straight into the image source. We'll call that in. Wait a couple 100 years. Call that in there. We're going to give it a width of 960. The height of 600. Out is going to call content. We're going to close that, and then we're going to close our div. We hit save, refresh, and now here's our content. Okay? So far, there's our site. Now what we're going to do for the footer is the same thing that we did for our header. We're going to do another in the footer, we're going to do another div that is going to go all the way across our website. Okay, so now this is the end of that. So let's go down a couple more and say end of middle section. As you can see, I'm really a neat freak. So as you can see, I like to type very logically, and I try and keep my code as organized as possible, as you can see here. This is great for later on if you need to debug, you need to go back, try and figure out what went wrong or something like that. This really helps out because it'll be a lot easier for you to find whatever mistakes it is. So here, end of middle section. Okay, and now let's do our footer. Okay, so for our footer, we're going to do the same as we did before. We're going to go footer BK, which is our big background, right? So we're going to give it a width of 100%. Oops, gotta close that. We're going to give it a height of 115 pixels. We're going to give it the commands to make sure that it clears both ways. We're going to clear both. Okay, and we're going to give it a background color. Background color, and let's just give it the same black. Whoa. Okay, save. Now on top of that, we want to make a little wrapper, right? So that we can fit our footer in there. So footer WP, which stands for wrapper, but you guys can type in wrapper if you want, no problems. Okay, so width 960 pixels. The height of our wrapper, jeez, get away from me there. Okay, the height of our wrapper is 115 pixels. We want this wrapper to be right smack in the middle, so it's 0 auto, right? And now we're actually where the image of our footer is going to go, so we're going to call that just footer. Okay, so the width for that is going to be 960 pixels. The height, again, is going to be 115 pixels. And we're going to float that one left. So again, this footer BK is the really long one, like the black one here, goes all the way across. On top of that, we're going to do the footer wrapper, which is what's going to hold our content for our wrapper. And then on top of that one, we're going to do the footer, which is the actual div that holds our image. So just like as I had explained before, it's one big box inside another box inside another box. And really, if you think about it that way, that's really what a website is. It's a whole bunch of boxes inside other boxes. So let's just call in that footer. So div ID, and that's going to be our footer wrapper, which is right there. Let's call that in. Let's put a little note, end of footer wrapper. Okay. Now inside this, we're going to do our, I'm sorry, that was the footer. Whoa, good catch. So the first one is BK, which is the really big one, right? So now here, div ID, this one is meant to be the footer background. Wow, I must be really tired right now. This is the wrapper. Close that, put a little note, and the footer wrapper. And then this down here should be background. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, bring this down, and now let's actually call in our div ID for the footer, which is actually going to hold our image, right? Okay, so footer, close that, save, hit F5, and here's our footer, but no image. So let's go ahead and put that last image in there. So again, MIG for image, SRC for source. We browse for our image. It's the last one, which is 6. Wait, again, width 960, height 115, alt, just gonna call that footer. Close that, hit F5, and there is our footer. So now let's check this in Firefox, see how it looks. There it is. Okay. So here we got our logo, our header, our navigation, our banner, our content, and our footer. Okay, we have a nice little background. We have a background to our footer and a background to our header that is going to stretch across our browser no matter how tall or wide. It's just, it kind of goes with it all along, centering our boxes always dead center. Okay, so guys, that's tutorial number 4. As always, if you have any questions, if you have any problems, or if you want the source code, make sure to drop me a comment below, and I'll be more than happy to help you guys. So Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.